All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sizes and sorts and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I am Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, the SGG of this terrible podcast name. And the QA stands for question and answer, because I like this to be an interactive show where we get to chat out some of the top news stories of the last week. And I like to hold my show on a Monday because we should all take a little time, sort of digest the news as it's coming in, sort of sort out our feelers on that, and then come back, discuss, and make sure that we're sort of on the pulse, that we're talking about things that are important, and that we're giving every story its time, sort of sort itself out. I'm already seeing a phenomenal group of folks in the live chat. Kiwi Mad Dog, I think he just got a new phone. Is that what I'm seeing? Q3 Becker, I got Steve, I got Matt Tyler. JMX Warrior is, I believe he said he just joined Twitch to check out this. Gary the Fireman, Abraham, I'm missing someone. Someone else just commented. And Pacostin. Excellent. So we've got a lot to jump into. This is going to be a really exciting show because I'm also going to be using this to highlight a couple videos that are going to be coming to the channel in a collaboration with my buddy TK Bay. Sean Diggs Tech. What's good, all? And then also just, got a couple developing stories that we need to flesh out. Had a wonderful weekend where we took daughter to the zoo, and she spent a long time, a lot of that time sort of walking around with one of my older sort of beat up mirrorless cameras. So I'm thinking like maybe I should try and put together like sort of a promo reel of toddler photography. I think that could be a lot of fun. She comes by it honest. But I do want to jump into some housekeeping. From Matt Tyler, one, you have moved angles. Yeah, a little bit. Kind of. Sort of. I'm wondering who else is going to like, sort of notice there's no... I'm just saying. If you're watching the live stream, other things have sort of changed. Is the image reversed again? Hold on, let me see. I didn't even check that. Let's, yep, it's flipped. Hold on. I'm going to fix this right now. That's what I'm going to do. And flip. It's so silly. Like, again, all of the myriad, what it does to your brain, the myriad numbers of permutations of what I'm seeing in the camera screen versus what my software is doing, how it's being broadcast. It's pretty magic. It's pretty great. Oh, and I'm drinking out of the wrong cup. Okay. So, yes, housekeeping. A couple cool things coming up. Not coming up. A couple cool things have already been put out there. Let me get into screen share here right quick. And so these are two things that are up on the Patreon right now. I've been sort of documenting the continuing misadventures at Creepy Tunnel. Creepy Tunnel is one of my favorite landmarks for some of my low-light camera samples in my camera reviews. I've been shooting this particular landmark in the valley, this completely unnotable landmark in the valley, for I'm going to say almost 5 or 6 years now. You can kind of see how it's changed over time. I posted a story about a kindly old gentleman who was living in the tunnel for a while and just wanted to clean it all up. And now there's like a caravan of people in there who are not nearly as noble as that older gentleman. So that's been posted to the Patreon. But the big news, the important post, after much teasing, and I probably could have finished this video like 2 weeks ago, the Google Pixel 3a camera deep dive review is finally available. It's a 22-minute deep dive into photo processing, exposure, saturation, white balance, stabilization, and it's just sort of a labor of love for a phone that I think is kind of special. I think this is an important phone for the United States. I get numerous people jumping into my comments and kind of flipping out about how other phones you get more techie giggle flips and megapixels and stuff for the monies. But here in the United States, we are starved for good competition between, sort of high 200 and low 500. That window has not been very well serviced because a lot of our market depends on pushing leasing phones and much more expensive phones over more responsibly purchasing a phone that's a better fit for you financially. Oh, it's only $30 a month and you're going to have this phone for 2.5 years, probably. That kind of thing makes that conversation a bit more difficult, because then someone says, like, oh, I can get a really nice phone for only $30, but this less nice phone is going to be $500. It's an easy way to prey on someone who's maybe a little less tech savvy. So there are a few digs at more expensive phones in this Pixel 3a camera review. I feel like the most important dig is at the big brother Pixel 3. But I did have a few people that were a little concerned about the tone of some of my commentary. And so there was like a pretty heated debate on the Patreon as to how I should be covering future products and whether or not my own bias is showing enough. So I wanted to take that second to address it here, because increasingly I am pushing more of my commentary over to my personal experiences and how I use these products and the trends that I see, especially the trends that bother me. So I think it's totally appropriate for people to call me out if I'm being inconsistent, or if maybe some of this is getting like a little too personalized. This isn't the kind of content you want to watch. And that's exactly the kind of feedback I'm going to need. I will need to hear from you fine folks out there how far we want to push some of this commentary and where we want to go with some of these discussions. So that's kind of the gig. One individual got very, very upset and then just started ranting and railing about how I've been calling Samsung evil. So that didn't go well, because this is a 22-minute video about the Pixel where none of the comment, and we're talking walls of text. Like, I think we went 5,000 words. I read through around 5,000 words of commentary about how flipped out he was and how Samsung was obviously the superior choice. And I could tell that this was very emotionally charged, because he instantly put on me that I said Samsung was evil for their business practices, which I've never said. I've never in a video said outright, you should not buy Samsung, as opposed to some other tech reviewers that have no problems in a review for an LG or a Moto or some other phone saying, oh, don't buy this phone, buy a Samsung instead. Like, I've never done that. I've been very careful to say you should not buy this phone, or you should buy another phone instead. I don't do that. But again, I could tell that this was very emotionally charged. And unfortunately, it was someone that I thought I was friends with. Like, I thought we were cool. But then sort of it devolved into this, like, I'm not upset, you're upset kind of back and forth, which is always a key signal, a key signifier that it's totally over, it's totally dead. There's no good resolution coming from this conversation. So that was a bit of a bummer. The good news, this is an amazing camera phone for $400. And I think that this is a wonderful moment, especially for Westerners, for people in North America, to finally start reinforcing the idea that a mid-ranger phone, and I mean truly in the mid-range, like $400 is a solid mid-range chunk when we've got phones that are way out there at the higher priced tier of the spectrum, that this is a good opportunity to make a more frugal purchase without it being punishing to use. Now, whenever I say that, people act, oh, are you really telling me that you'd recommend this phone over others? Well, if you've listened to this podcast, you would know that I have. I mean, it's like I've got family members that could probably afford these LG G8s on sale or Galaxy S10es with BOGOs. But you have to jump through those hoops, or you have to sign up for another line of service. And I'm really tired of people disingenuously comparing a premium phone 6 months old on a sale to a brand new mid-ranger at full MSRP when there have been sales for this phone. So I told the story, like my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, are now on Pixel 3As, and they couldn't be happier. They wanted sort of smaller form factor phones, something roughly in the same ballpark as what they had for the Moto G4. They didn't pay full MSRP, and they each got a free month of Google Fi. So they did sign up for Google Fi. So if we're going to compare, like, a $600 LG or what is it now? I think you can get a Galaxy S10e on some carriers under some weather conditions at the right phase of the moon for like $550. Why are we comparing a Galaxy S10e on sale against the full MSRP of a Pixel 3a? Because, again, if you're a savvy shopper, you're not paying full MSRP for any phone. It's the same thing. Like I recently put out a review on the CoolPad Legacy. It's an entry-level device. Full MSRP is $180. So I reviewed it at the full MSRP. That's where I judged my assessment of that phone. You could easily find it. I think it went on sale when it first launched for $130. It's on another carrier. I reviewed it on Metro for T-Mobile, but I think you can get it on another MVNO for $100. And if you sign up for a line of service, it's $30 out the door. This isn't about covering the basics. This is a really nice way to have a multimedia-focused device for under $200. But I held to the same rule I always hold to. What did the manufacturer claim that phone belonged in what tier? Samsung is claiming Galaxies belong in the $750 plus tier. LG is claiming roughly what, $850 full MSRP, even though I don't think it's ever really been sold at full MSRP. Though that's the tier. So an LG G8 is paired up against a full-size Galaxy S10, not an S10 Plus, an S10. That's where we position these things. And if you can get a sale, or if your regional pricing is different, kudos. Great. But I'm not going to sit here and jump through hoops for every video in the time that video was shot to search every single retail outlet to try and find what phone is 10 cents cheaper on another storefront or on another carrier, and then figure out, was this a BOGO? Is this a trade-in deal? Is this sign up for a new line of service? That's a losing proposition. You will never get good information if that's how you try to approach content, which is supposed to live a little bit longer than just, I made this video today, watch it today, and now it's dead. Because I don't have time for that. So, yes, short story, incredibly long. 22-minute video, the Pixel 3a camera deep dive is live. For the public YouTube, I do have the camera conclusion, so that's going to go up this afternoon. I'm really excited about that because I think I had a little fun just kind of cutting up the end bit where I talk about my experiences using the phone and how I think it fits in the market. And then I just think there's a fun joke in there. It's a Pixel, but it's cheaper. So, that's gonna be good times. Oh, and I see Fat Produce is in the live chat. He was saying that he had an earlier meeting. Everyone, we should still keep tagging my buddy Andrew because he's working a job that regularly prevents him from watching the beginning of the podcast. But if he keeps having his meetings earlier, then this would be fine. This would be a good way to continue, watching the show as it goes live. So just make that part of the standard operating procedure. It's going to be great. So, all right, let's get this thing going. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Can't get this thing going just yet. One other little bit of housekeeping and something that was a fun return to form for me. So, hold on, let me take a quick sip of water from the correct coffee mug here. And so, let me get this out of the way here. All right, so before I was some gadget guy, I was some audio guy. I built sort of a lot of this online commentary and reviewing on sort of higher-end recording equipment. I worked in commercial voiceover. I sort of built a reputation for helping people install home recording equipment. And then because I didn't want to keep answering the same questions over and over and over again, I started producing videos. That's sort of the long version, short story long of sort of getting from voiceover talent agency and voiceover casting to doing tech videos. It started with microphones and mixers and audio interfaces. So I'm friends with Adam Dowd. Adam Dowd and I got along really, really well when I was at Pocket Now, and he was a very aggressive advocate for podcasting and putting together cool shows, and he was one of the primary resources that Jules and I would tap for things like sponsorships. He just had a really good head, really good sense for the business of putting an audio show together. And so after I left Pocket Now, I think he left. He might have left shortly before I did. because there was a sort of a crossover as I was only doing the Pocket Now podcast for a while. But he went on to basically produce a ton of other podcasts. Digit Daily, one of the Android podcasts that he's been working on. And he invited me to come and join the Sound Guys. And this was just a wonderful and beautiful way to kind of return to sort of like where I came from. So there's a new podcast. It's out today. I mean, you could stop this and go listen to that. I would prefer you finish this podcast and then go back. But Sound Guys, they make these really fun and these really well-researched looks into specific elements of audio. If it's Bluetooth audio codecs, they've got an episode where they kind of walk you through all the differences for Bluetooth audio codecs. The podcast they invited me to join was The Intense History of Sound in Video Games. This is from the Sound Guys podcast feed. Today, we take sound in video games for granted, but how did sound evolve from pings of Pong to the toe-curling growls of The Last of Us? What innovations now allow us to slash boxes to the beat in Beat Saber, and what music genres have grown out of the video game community? This was really fun to dig into. So they set up the stage of how we get any type of audio performance in video games, where it sort of mutates into chip tuning, FM synthesis, and MIDI into the 80s, and then they let me kind of run with the 90s on, talking about CD technology and new genres of gameplay that have all been formed by music. So again, as we start moving into more cinematic audio. So that's already available now. I would just recommend, if you're into shows like mine, you'd probably also dig some of the more in-depth sort of examinations of audio topics. And if you're a sound nerd like I am, you absolutely should be subscribed to this podcast too. So I had a lot of fun joining them. They let me kind of ramble on a little bit, talking about sort of the genres of music that we started listening to in the late 90s and early aughts, and then where we go with VR. So it was a lot of fun. From Abraham AM, hashtag some sound guys. It's a pretty good mashup. I like that. Gary the fireman is telling Andrew, quit your job. This podcast is more important. I agree. My show should always be more important than your ability to sustain yourself with food and shelter. And Andrew's replying, this makes me think of how impressed I was with the original Medal of Honor for PlayStation 1 and how it featured a fully orchestrated score by Michael Giacchino. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Well, Andrew, I think, the example, one of the examples I used when we started moving over into compact discs for gaming was X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, which I believe was the first that used the true John Williams orchestrated score for a Star Wars game. And someone will correct me on that because I'm probably wrong, but that's the one that I looked up and I thought was first. So, yeah, good times. Sound Guys podcast. Just good nerdcore material in general. And again, if you're one of those people like me where you're sort of constantly on the lookout for reviews of things like headphones, I love digging into that. I actually have 3 headphone reviews coming out this week that will happen. I'm not lying. Then I would wholeheartedly recommend that you also give Sound Guys a follow too. Chatty Boy joining us on the Mixer. Hey guys. Hey Chatty Boy. Thanks for jumping into the live chat on another streaming service. Again, this podcast coming to you on Twitch, Mixer, and Periscope. It'll hit the YouTubes later. Okay. Whew. That was a longer section of housekeeping. It's always a longer section of housekeeping than I intend it to be, but we do need to jump into some news topics before we get into some of the more fun stuff. Just for those of you who get sort of a little precious or a little time sensitive, before we get to the halfway break, I don't know if it will be halfway, that's when we're going to cover the Jony Ive leaving Apple story, and then coming back from that is when we're going to talk about Huawei, G20, and President Trump. And then at the very end of this podcast is when we're going to announce that new cheap phone challenge between me and TK Babe. So to lead up, I do have some political stories that we need to touch on lightly. We don't have to spend a ton of time on each of these, But again, some important stuff is we've been covering things like net neutrality. That is a political and philosophical approach to trying to equalize traffic, the data, the bits of traffic as we go through the relationship between an internet service provider, the companies that do business on the internet, and the customers that do business with both companies and with ISPs. So this story doesn't have the same connectivity implication. It's just something I'm very surprised to see being fronted by conservatives. Whenever we've sort of talked about the political history of things like nanny state, policing media, policing content, often there's a pretty heavy liberal component to that. Like when we tried to censor rap lyrics, that was a more distinct push from folks like Tipper Gore, right? So we've got sort of a long-standing history of, won't someone please think of the children clutching the pearls, leaning a little bit more left. So when I saw this story from Vox, I was actually kind of surprised, and I looked up, who this individual was, that this was coming from a conservative. Republican senator wants the government to police Twitter for political bias. This is written up by Jane Coaston on Vox. And from the article, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, a conservative attorney with a strong populist background, recently introduced a bill that would give the government new, broad powers to regulate tech companies, an escalation of the right's push to fight back against what they see as unjust censorship of conservatives on social media sites. Their concerns are myriad. Allegations of shadow banning on Twitter, YouTube channels belonging to popular right-leaning figures getting demonetized, and right-wing firebrands like conspiracy theorist Alex Jones getting banned from major streaming platforms entirely, though others have argued that those concerns are overblown. And then this was a tweet from the official Senator Hawley press office. And this says, the entire moderation process of these big tech companies is shrouded in secrecy because they refuse to make their protocols public. If tech giants want to keep their government-granted immunity, they must bring transparency and accountability to their editorial process. This is a very tangled and complicated, emotionally charged story, because I feel like both factions, the left and the right, are likely to feel like they're somehow being wronged by the current trend of dissemination of information and how tech companies leverage their current lobbying infrastructure to their own benefits. What I'm kind of surprised here, though, is seeing a conservative start talking about regulating a private corporation. We've taken the influence of Google and YouTube, Twitter and Facebook, these companies, these massive online data collection entities. We've started using them as the de facto backbone for public services. They're not public. They are private institutions. And that's usually the conservative stance would be, well, regulations are bad. Obviously, I feel like the current trend in commentary right now is that those institutions, the Googles, the Facebooks, are less likely to help the conservative agenda disseminate their information because of some recent issues in how these social media networks can be gamed, how they can be sort of manipulated. And when that information makes it downstream to consumers, how consumers are being manipulated by less than reputable sources of information. So now we're very concerned about regulating private industry because it's less likely to work to their advantage. At the same time, we already kind of went through our temper tantrum on the left, and we're sort of still pushing for some very similar ideas. Where after losing the last presidential election, we started calling into question, how do these organizations operate? And also why? I mean, again, to put my personal spin on it, talking about my personal experiences in this arena, I'm increasingly leaning towards discussions like Elizabeth Warren saying we should start breaking these companies up. if they can't operate in a way with consumer data, if they can't operate in a way which minimizes the amount of public harm for their infrastructure and for their profits, then we need to look at how do we increase competition into this space. If you break up a company like Alphabet into its various holdings and entities, we'd see an influx of other companies trying to compete against smaller former divisions of Google as opposed to trying to fight Google one-on-one. And same thing, we can talk about Amazon's relationship with commerce. We can talk about Facebook's relationship with data mining and advertising. So we're approaching very different solutions, but we are actually starting to agree. This is actually kind of exciting. I don't believe that a government entity should wholesale police what content is distributed on Twitter. That I think is wrong. But I think we're asking the right questions if we're seeing problems there. I think we are asking, we are looking at the data, and both left pundits and right pundits, even though they disagree on the exacting mechanics, are at least agreeing that this reality is the same, that there are significant problems and some major issues with companies that operate black box algorithmic sorting of data to try and keep you on their platform as addicted as possible. There are significant issues with how those systems can be manipulated to alter the perception of complex political and legal stories. So I'm actually really happy. I mean, I viscerally disagree with Josh Hawley's solution. I don't feel like this piece of legislation would actually fix the problem that he's pointing to, but I'm just so happy we're all starting to agree on what the problems are. So, from Matt Tyler, it sounds like what the Chinese government do with their citizens. They have full control of what people see and don't see. It's not good for the people. And you all have probably heard me whinge on. I don't want government to be involved in regulating the content. Same thing with video games, because I have a video game story that we're going to touch on too. But if that industry cannot figure out solutions for some of these problems that we're starting to agree on, then the only other recourse we have as citizens is to start leveraging the political and legal process. That's a broadsword, heavy-handed, clumsy solution to something that really does require more industry scalpeling. But if the industry is unwilling to scalpel, we got to use the broadsword. Kiwi Mad Dog 420, they say censorship. I say, who wants to see that dog stuff? I censored your reply. No, I mean, that's, again, it's very tricky. It's, we start throwing around words like censorship, and that's a dog whistle mechanic to get people lit up and afraid and terrified. But essentially, we have to figure out how to get around something like a Facebook where they're not censoring content, but they are manipulating how you see it. And they are sort of guiding you towards outrage porn and staying on their platform as long as they can. If Facebook can't clean up their own house, something has to happen. I lean more towards breaking these companies up. That, to me, I think would be a better solution with farther reaching ramifications for competition. Just like when we broke up Ma and Pa Bell, we broke up AT&T, we got this huge surge of communications competition. That was really good for our market. And I feel the same thing would happen. It's not like the services you like from Google, the services you like from Amazon, the services you like from Facebook would go away. Even if Facebook decided to discontinue a product, another company would fulfill that service. To me, that feels like the better solution. Again, this is speaking very generally, like this is easy when this is probably one of the most difficult challenges our society will face, is what to do with these mega huge corporations. From Andrew from Fat Produce, I really don't like that Facebook and Google are trying to influence us on how to think. Either way, yeah, I mean, if you're a liberal, you're very concerned about the influence of these companies. If you're a conservative, you're very influenced about you're very concerned about the influence of these companies. From Matt Tyler, Facebook have no idea how to censor anything. You can see a headless cat, but can't see a bird in a tree. It's stupid. Either do it right or not at all. And this is another thing. We've talked about Facebook on this podcast before, because being a victim of their own success, it's not that I feel bad, but it's just like I have to acknowledge the insurmountable challenge. It's an impossible challenge to try and police all of the content that goes through. And we can try and talk up all of the fancy algorithms and software and AI and machine learning and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, almost all of that ends up just being traffic in front of a pair of human eyeballs that get a couple seconds to make a determination on what's platform appropriate. So Facebook acknowledges that they have an editorial responsibility to police the content on their platform, and they put that in the hands of people who are not paid very well, who work in grueling conditions, and don't get a lot of time to assess what is or isn't platform appropriate. And every day, the rules change because some person will find a new terrible thing to try and share on Facebook that they didn't have a rule for before. I don't think anyone is capable of reining that in. I think you always have to deal with rules not being followed, rules not existing, garbage content making its way to people, and then you just try and react as best you can. But I think it's ultimately a losing proposition. I feel, a company will fall apart before they ever figure out how to properly rein in that kind of content. Moving right along. Another political story, and I'm sorry to front load so much politics here, but this one I'm not going to spend as much time on, and I say that, and I'll probably have lied to you, but this is one of those stories, like I feel I have to add this to the list of stories we regularly check in on. Like if there's an FCC story in my newsfeed, I want to share it with you all. If there's a net neutrality story in my newsfeed, I want to share it with you all. I think we're going to have to start doing the same thing with encryption, because we do this dance every couple years, and it's always a terrible idea when a government says they want to try and ban encryption for consumer products or force companies to install back doors into their encrypted products. This is always bad. There really is no good argument for doing this, and we've been waging this fight, I want to say, since Windows 3.1, where we started seeing the beginnings of consumer protection and consumer encryption for private use. And of course, it always inflares this debate of, well, law enforcement and keeping people safe, and what if a terrorist, and then how do we fix, and then how do we fight? And instead, I think this should always be an arms race. Apple builds a better smartphone, and then other companies figure out how to crack it. The clumsy metaphor I use is you build a house and you install really nice locks. You should not be compelled to give your local police station a key to your home, right? They can just let themselves in whenever they want, but don't worry, they're police officers, so that's totally safe. I feel like ending encryption or building backdoors is clumsily a similar idea, where, don't worry, governments have never abused their ability to snoop in on your communications and your data, even though they totally have. And we regularly see, people say, I stalked an ex-girlfriend because I had access to all this stuff. So we even did this dance during the Obama administration, again, where most of our elected officials, not so good at the tech, and our mainstream media does a terrible job of reporting on this stuff because it's the techie geeky stuff. And you're not a geek, are you, lame-o? Because because their audience might not be able to follow sort of the nuances of so many of these stories, they just don't even try. So this is coming from Politico, so I'm really happy they wrote this up. But Trump officials weigh an encryption crackdown. Senior Trump administration officials met on... I'm sorry, this is written up by Eric Geller on Politico. Senior Trump administration officials met on Wednesday to discuss whether to seek legislation prohibiting tech companies from using forms of encryption that law enforcement can't break, a provocative step that would reopen a long-running feud between federal authorities and Silicon Valley. The encryption challenge, which the government calls going dark, was the focus of a National Security Council meeting Wednesday morning that included the number 2 officials from several key agencies, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. Senior officials debated whether to ask Congress to effectively outlaw end-to-end encryption, which scrambles data so that only its sender and recipient can read it. These people told Politico. Tech companies like Apple, Google, and Facebook have increasingly built end-to-end encryption into their products and software in recent years, billing it as a privacy and security feature, but frustrating authorities investigating terrorism, drug trafficking, and child pornography. So yeah. Oh, let me click out of... There we go. That's tough. And there really isn't a great everyone gets to be safe answer. However, while some of those law enforcement pursuits are absolutely noble, years ago, before I joined Pocket Now, I actually got to sit down. Is it EPCAT or is it ECPAT? I can never remember what the acronym is. But I got to speak with one of the regional directors for a nonprofit that helps law enforcement unravel child pornography rings. And she and I had, again, it was one of those first, you mentioned child porn in a YouTube video, and man, that video was never going to be monetized. But here I'm sitting with someone who's done amazing work in helping to guide local law enforcement, like police departments, on how to break up international data trafficking of absolutely reprehensible and terrible material. And you can find that on my YouTube channel. That video still exists. I need to look it up. That's going to drive me nuts if it's EPCAT or ECPAT. And I could never remember. ECPAT. ECPAT International, a global network ending child sexual exploitation. ECPAT International is working to eliminate the sexual exploitation of children through prostitution, trafficking, and child sexual abuse material online. And, that was a hard conversation just to have, let alone how do we build policy around the infrastructures that your sort of regular day-to-day consumers take for granted, and then those same systems can be exploited for tremendously terrible tiny groups of people. And I don't think that there's a good answer. I think that's a very hard concept to wrestle with philosophically. That being said, I feel there is so much more potential for harm at a much, much larger scale by making our systems purposely insecure. That the vast majority of people who go about their day just sort of depending on technology for business, communications, connectivity with family, blah, 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 that making their products less secure will have a far more reaching direct effect in how that individual or how that population's data will be mismanaged, abused, exploited. So I still, even though there are, I fully do believe there are good law enforcement arguments for why they've been seeking the ability to end things like encryption, I don't always feel that those arguments are really being championed in good faith. That certain political organizations and certain administrations have a more vested interest in being able to peek in on what people are doing or what they're saying or how they're conducting their business. I don't like that idea that the only way to keep people safe is to break down a citizen or a consumer's basic privacy, when we've already seen that those mechanisms have been exploited and abused in the past. From Matt Tyler, I'm sure I read something on WhatsApp encryption being hacked. I'd be very surprised if there haven't been numerous attacks on WhatsApp encryption. From Steve, Q3 Becker, the NSA already knows my deepest, darkest secrets. And then Total Tech on Periscope replies, that just means buy Chinese. The joke I was telling, because we're going to talk about Huawei later, the joke I was saying is, well, maybe the NSA has a harder time cracking Huawei's chips, like the Kirin processors. So they don't know all of the Chinese backdoors, which is why they're against consumers using Chinese products. From Fat Produce, my friends and I are trying to find a good open source WhatsApp alternative with encryption since Facebook is sinking its claws into WhatsApp more and more. From Pat Gostin, and at the same time, NSA tools are exploited over and over again with no repercussions. Makes you wonder what the purpose is for such laws, which they disregard the law anyway. And that's another. See, that's a good point, Pat Gostin. Not to sit here and I'm sure the NSA already probably has a file on me. Again, this is where I'm putting my tinfoil hat back on. But we have those situations where malware, spyware from the CIA and the NSA has fallen into other governments' hands. When the British NHS system went down, that I believe that was CIA software that got out of hand, was probably manipulated from North Korea, and wasn't even intended to go out as a global attack. It got out of North Korea's hands and then went on sort of a rampage that cost billions to correct and fix all of the damage that this piece of malware did. So that's bad when we're trying to maintain encryption and protection for individuals' products. I would have to believe that impact would be even more severe if we're purposely making products less secure and more easily exploited. That would be my potentially unlearned hypothesis. Chatty Boy 3, Telegram is the best WhatsApp alternative. Chatty Boy is over on Mixer. I've been hearing really good things about Telegram. I just have so many. So this is where I get old and cranky. I just have so many different ways that I'm supposed to reach out to people, and I just kind of have to memorize. Oh, well, so-and-so, it's easiest if I DM them on Twitter. And, oh, that aunt, I can only reach on Facebook. And you know what? And just for my mom, because we write long messages, let's just stick to email. Email seems to do fine. It's pretty rough. Matt Tyler, careful what you're saying. They're listening. All right, let's switch gears. I want to talk about how science is proving me right and my ire and my soapboxing. Where are we? 9:44. Okay, so I'm going to try and wrap up two more stories, and then we're going to talk about Jony Ive. This is from the Royal Society. I'm not going to spend a long time on this. I'm probably lying to you about that. I'll probably spend the next hour on it. Royal Society Open Science. I'm actually going to link to this paper. This was published the 19th of June, 2019. David Zendel, Rachel Meyer, and Harriet Over. Title of the published article, Adolescents and Loot Boxes, Links with Problem Gambling and Motivations for Purchase. And here's the abstract of this paper. Loot boxes are items in video games that can be paid for with real-world money but contain randomized contents. Many games that feature loot boxes are played by adolescents. Similarities between loot boxes and gambling have led to concern that they are linked to the development of problem gambling in adolescents. Previous research has shown links between loot boxes and problem gambling in adult populations. However, thus far, there is no empirical evidence of either the size or existence of a link between loot box spending and problem gambling in adolescents. A large-scale survey of 16 to 18-year-olds found evidence for such a link. The link between loot box spending and problem gambling among these older adolescents was of a moderate to large magnitude. It was stronger than relationships previously observed in adults. Qualitative analysis of text data shows that gamers bought loot boxes for a variety of reasons. Several of these motivations were similar to common reasons for engaging in gambling. Overall, these results suggest that loot boxes either cause problem gambling among older adolescents, allow game companies to profit from adolescents with gambling problems for massive monetary rewards, or both of the above. Possible strategies for regulation and restriction are given. I'm feeling pretty vindicated. When I started covering some of the loot box issues, I was deep into Marvel Future Fight, and the end game on Marvel Future Fight started getting way more paywall spendy, tons more random number generating events. You constantly praying to RNGesus to try and get a good roll for an armor set for a character in a game with 200 characters, where it would cost you probably close to $1,000 to rank one individual character. When EA stumbled with Star Wars BF2. And then recently they just said, oh, well, no, we're not going to have loot boxes in our new game, or our new Star Wars game. Instead, we're going to have surprise mechanics, which is the loot box. Again, anything that ties addictive behavior to random number generating events and can have a real world monetary attachment, I feel that should be a rated adults only game. So kind of like where we were going back, we have a senator that's trying to police Twitter because he doesn't like some of the content that Twitter lets live on their platform, and he's upset that Twitter will silence other types of content. If the video game industry cannot recognize what's happening with loot box mechanics, gambling mechanics built into video games that will be consumed by children, in much the same way that the Las Vegas Commission cracks down hard on underage gambling, and there's an entire regulatory board to make sure that casinos don't mess with the payouts on things like slot machines. If video game publishers can't get on board and police themselves and properly educate consumers, because right now ratings only apply to the content of the story. So if a game is really gory, it might be rated M or rated adults only, AO. But if you're using advanced monetary gambling mechanics, that has no impact on the rating. The content of the gameplay doesn't factor into the rating of the game. I feel immediately the best solution to keep politicians out of our video games is to start utilizing the rating system for both the content of the story and the content of the gameplay. And if you want to start targeting 18-year-olds and up with advanced gambling mechanics, I really don't have a significant problem with that. Though I do feel you should have sort of clearly disclosed payout rates. So if you have a loot box, you should be allowed to know what the odds of a payout are. Apple is doing this in their app store, where if games have a randomized mechanic, they have to disclose what the payout rates are. I think Google will be jumping on board that if they haven't already. Same thing. EA wants to make another Star Wars game, and it's all about Jedis, and there's cool random number generating events, and you get a box and it flips open and it's cool and graphics. Adults only. I don't care if it's a family-friendly franchise. I don't care if no one ever says an F-bomb. Adults only. That's gambling. And we're starting to now see scientific data where a trio of researchers are feeling pretty confident about not saying that there's a correlation, that this could be causation. That's a big step for a scientist. They don't throw out cause willy-nilly. So that's... I'm going to be doing I've finished up the script. I said this a couple weeks back. I'm going to get back on, especially now that this paper has been published. I'm going to get back on sort of a parent's guide to video game mechanics and talk about what some warnings or some triggers might be. If you're noticing your kid is spending a lot of time doing this, or if they're asking for extra allowance money to buy these in-game packs, things like that. Just some clues. Because, for this scientific paper, I think they have to go... They have to go... I'm still scanning. 1.4, why adolescents buy loot boxes. So just to explain the mechanics at play, starting with the introduction in the scientific paper Introduction in 1.1, what are loot boxes? Let me pull this up here. And I'm just going to dump this into Word to see. It takes 2,600 words to break down what a loot box is, how it factors into gameplay, and how it might affect the person playing that game. 2,600 words just to start the conversation on the actual study, so that someone who's reading this and is not familiar with, sort of the modern day video game landscape can understand what are loot boxes. I mean, let me just show you what that looks like in this scientific paper. So here's Introduction 1. What are loot boxes? Loot boxes and problem gambling. 1.3. Features of loot boxes. 1.3.1. Some loot box contents can be cashed out. 1.3.2. Some loot box contents give gameplay advantages. 1.3.3. Some loot boxes show near misses. Oh, you almost got there. You almost got the thing you really wanted. Maybe give us more money and spin again. 1.3.4. Some loot box contents can only be bought using an in-game currency, but 1.3.5, some loot boxes are sometimes given away for free. I mean, this goes on for 2,600 words before we get to why adolescents buy loot boxes, before we even really start getting into the guts of the introduction of what they feel is problematic about this. I'm really happy. I'm really happy that this is being talked about from the scientific side and not just, there's a senator with a hard-on for, policing video game content. Like, this is a huge step and something that we can leverage in our conversations. And again, especially if you're that person in your circle of family and friends, like I am, I'm the one that sort of has to keep bringing up tech topics to help, educate my family and friends. This is the type of stuff you put under their nose. You don't even have to read it. Just read the introduction. Read the abstract, so that you can see there are some concerning trends here. It's not, it's just he's playing Nintendo. No, we've got to fix this, because I really don't want the broadsword of the legal system stomping around for inside the content of our games, because they won't stop with gameplay mechanics. They'll start fussing with the content of the story, and every time we've seen that sort of government influence for morality, it gets pretty gross. It gets pretty ugly. From Matt Tyler, talking about policing, there should be 100% policing on loot boxes and greedy companies like EA. Not just gambling, it's kids being addicted and spending parents' money without knowing about it. It's a massive issue. I do feel strongly against the implementation of certain loot box styles. Kiwi Mad Dog 420, RN Jesus is a good Juan. Q3 Becker, loot box is worse than gambling, IMO. I mean, surprise mechanics. I actually do feel like there is something even worse. Like, a slot machine will eventually give you monies if you throw enough coin in there. And I know, like, when I started doing these stories, I got a lot of pushback from gamers, talking about, like, oh, well, this isn't any different than when you would go and buy Magic cards. And, like, it's completely different. I'd open pack after pack after pack of Magic cards, be able to trade them with my friends. I mean, obviously, there's that random mechanic of opening the shiny foil paper, shiny foil wrapper, and hoping that I'd get something really, really good. But it wasn't that, like, oh, I got something really good in my last pack, and now, Wizards of the Coast are altering my payouts for every pack I open after, right? It's not like they gave me a ton of good stuff right away and then changed the payouts later. And that's what video game companies can do. Oh, you aren't buying enough loot boxes. Let's feed you a couple real big wins. Let's get you really excited about pulling this arm on the slot machine. Oh, now you're buying a lot of loot boxes? Okay, well, now we're going to back off. We're going to keep you on the hook. We're not going to give you as many good things. We can change the metrics in real time on how we pay this stuff out. And that should be horrifically illegal. From Pacostin, I miss the days of a 0.01% drop rate in my dungeon crawlers. I want to say it's 4 decimal places on Marvel Future Fight if you want like a really good upgrade for a uniform. I think it's tracked out 0.0003. That's how far the percentage payout is. And those crystal packs, like you can buy a crystal pack for $100 and then immediately obliterate it in a random number generator and never get what you want. It's shocking and disgusting. And we've got another shocking and disgusting story because when I complain about some of the political issues that we've been facing, one of the stories that's a very regular topic for us to follow on this podcast is the right to repair. Covered this it was before Taipei, so it was actually probably a couple months back. Let me cue this up. Microsoft. This is from securerepairs.org, securepairs.org, securepairs.org. Just written up by Secure Repair Admin. But this is a very disappointing story for a company that I've actually been enjoying a lot of their products. Microsoft tells FTC repair poses a cyber risk. It does not. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, except to continue to slam Microsoft like I've complained about Apple in the past, where they have been heavily lobbying against states that are enacting right to repair legislation. We lost a fight here in California. Technically, it's still going to go up for a vote, but it was slow played. It's going to be sort of back-burnered. Microsoft went in, lobbied hard against the right to repair. And so this is a phenomenal article. It's going to be in the show notes after this podcast goes live. But I would highly recommend reading through this too, because this is sort of the strategy in the front that we're going to be fighting next if you value right to repair. And one of the biggest arguments is just a really frustrating, and sort of surface level argument that doesn't even really sound like a good argument on first listen. To oversimplify, basically Microsoft is saying repairing an electronic device can lead to consumers being more vulnerable for theft. I mean, I wish I could determine more what their big fear is, but they're presenting information to the FTC saying, well, you're going to hand over your phone or you're going to hand over your tablet or your laptop or your computer, and then an unscrupulous repair agent could make off with your identity or get all of your banking and financial history or steal all of your nude selfies, and that's scary. But And Secure Repairs makes this same comparison. If you get anything fixed, you could run into someone less than honorable and they could steal your property or steal your identity or break into your home or do anything. I mean, that is an argument to say you should not have the right to fix your gadgets and electronics because someone might do something bad is a bad argument. So, I mean, we also, Luis Rossmann also followed some of the Apple side of this too, where it's dangerous. They were making the argument that it's dangerous to repair your electronics because if someone doesn't know what they're doing, they could rupture a battery cell, that could catch on fire. That's super scary. But again, we're even just fighting for third-party repair shops to have good access to materials, to replacement parts, to guides, to white papers, to be able to pay for certifications so that they can be authorized to work on these gadgets. It's really scummy. Kiwi Mad Dog 420, I just saw your comment. That's scummy from Microsoft. It's really scummy. I don't like that as a trend, but more, I'm just disappointed that because Microsoft is making this argument, and Microsoft is a very valuable corporation, they're a very valuable entity, that a bad argument is going to be given more weight, right? That's a terrible argument. It's not a good argument. Someone might do something bad to you, so you don't get to fix your computer. That's so dumb. But again, you've got a team of Microsoft lawyers making that argument to the FTC. So someone at the FTC is going to go, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way before. Leslie Gwynn on Facebook. Their reasoning is garbage. Again, it doesn't take much to unravel. That's a dumb argument. I hate it so much. Matt Tyler, they are only against right to repair because they won't be able to charge stupid amounts of money anymore for a repair from them because you can go elsewhere. They will never agree to it and will always make up some security or danger reason why it's a bad idea. And it's all about unraveling the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there's a part of me that wants to tag Microsoft on this because, like Apple, their products are not particularly easy to fix. Hit one of the iFixit guides for Surface or a Surface laptop. Ooh, do the Surface laptop. It's a beautifully built, thin, portable laptop, but I don't know that just your average Joe Schmo consumer would be able to do something basic like swap out an SSD without completely wrecking the frame of that laptop. Like, it's pretty gross. Whereas, I mean, I've got like that MateBook 13 from scary Huawei, and super thin, super light. It's a little plasticky, but just 8 screws on the back. You take out 8 screws, and there's your computer, and it's open, and you can fix stuff. So yes, that's Microsoft disappointing me today. Another company disappointing me. Again, this is just going to be in the show notes, so I'm going to run through this one real fast. But, from Andrew Wallace. I don't even want to think about taking apart my Surface Book 2. All of the computers in your tablet, dude. Yeah, that would be a scary disassemble. No, disassemble. No. All right. Thanks, Apple. Intel will auction off smartphone modem patents and exit the industry. This is from Android Authority, C. Scott Brown. Back in April, Apple announced that it would cease all litigation against chip manufacturer Qualcomm and enter a new partnership with that company that will see Qualcomm modems installed in new crops of iPhones, probably this year. That was me adding that. On that same day, Intel announced it was exiting the smartphone modem business entirely. Now, according to IAM, Intel is going one step further and auctioning off many of its smartphone modem assets. The information appears to suggest that without Apple as a partner, Intel has no need for its patents surrounding smartphone modems at all. Who thinks this is a bad idea? Every single time Intel has played in the mobile space, they kind of dabble, they kind of poke at some things, and then they walk away and they lose out on humongous market opportunities. For me, the most egregious was buying up the ARM chipset Xscale. Intel had Xscale. Intel had this great ARM product, but they had it during the time of PDAs. And they only, I think there was some crossover as we were getting into those early terrible Windows mobile smartphones, like you'd have to like clip a keyboard onto the bottom and use a tiny little stylus on a 2.5-inch touchscreen display, but it was resistive. You'd have to poke into the screen and you could get about 3 hours of battery life if you didn't look at the phone. Instead of playing in that space, they gave up Xscale. And they gave up Xscale. And then the iPhone revolutionized consumer mobile products, and Intel was left trying to fight in like the tablet space with things like the Atom processors, which really weren't bad, but it depended on a very delicate relationship with Microsoft to try and craft software that wouldn't run like garbage on lower power chipsets. And we also had that same problem where Celerons and Atoms were being put into netbooks, and then Apple just slammed everybody with the MacBook Air. Intel keeps getting there early, trying to compete, and then giving up, and then walking away as the product sector just absolutely dominates. I'm not excited about 5G. Like, the technology is cool, especially, being able to connect more devices to a tower. I think like some of that stuff is great, but the actual consumer ramifications, consumer implications of 5G are probably never going to reach the middle of our country. There are people who have LTE in name only on their phones, and they're never getting any of the real benefits of a true LTE long-term evolution connection. So here they are walking away from modems and networking at a time where the industry is going to start putting modems and radios in everything. You lose Apple as a partner, but you could have pushed. You could have made that play. We're going to see Windows on ARM. We're going to see Google pushing more desktop usage to mobile. Everything that's going to hurt Intel as x86 processors start becoming more devalued. Even AMD is working strategic partnerships with companies like Samsung. Intel is huge. They're not just going to disappear. But this is another one of those moves that makes me feel like Intel might start going the way of IBM if they're not on a good consumer track. They're always going to have science and infrastructure and business and supercomputing and clusters and servers, all of that. Like, again, they're always going to have products and be competitive in those spaces. But they're losing to AMD for this next generation of chipsets. They're going to be slow to market with PCIe 4. They don't have any type of low-power mobile chipset solution that can really best what Qualcomm is doing. They're giving up on radios for 5G, and 5G is going to be built into everything, like your toaster. But just think of all those component manufacturers that don't want to do business with Qualcomm to build 5G into your thermostat, and how valuable even a slightly less efficient Intel modem would be as a competitive solution in that space. You don't need, like, it's a bummer on my iPhone XS that my iPhone gets kind of garbage reception and much slower data connectivity speeds because they went with an Intel modem and radio. But would that matter on my thermostat? Would that matter on my 5G connected washer and dryer or refrigerator? It would matter zero. And Intel's missing out on a huge economic boost to these patents that they have already done the work on. So I just driving me crazy. This is a terrible, terrible move from Intel to give up on this stuff, and not only give up on it, like, oh, we'll salvage a little cash by selling it off. Qualcomm is going to snatch this up for like pennies on the dollar, and then we're going to have an even more monopolistic state on 5G consumer electronics. Well, from Kiwi Mad Dog 420, Intel knows they have nothing to compete against Qualcomm's modems. Apple knows this too, but I disagree. I think even a less efficient 5G modem could be sold at lower prices with Intel patents and Intel tech, and that could be leverage for a company who now has a choice in the market between doing business with Qualcomm or doing business with Intel, and Intel would get to profit from that competition. I really don't know what the numbers would look like, but just because you can't best Qualcomm on phones doesn't mean that you can't fight Qualcomm everywhere else. And you put that Intel badge on it, and you would be able to create sort of a consumer trend, and Intel would have a consumer viable product, a consumer-facing viable product in the market. From Matt Tyler, 5G foldable phone, good tech, but not practical at all. Tech is moving forward, but not in a way that will catch the eye of the average consumer. Chipsets, CPU average consumers don't care. Well, they do kind of care, because I've heard people complain about how their iPhones don't get as good reception, but you're largely right that they don't care about the minutia. Like, they don't care about the label, they don't care about the brand. They want it to just work. But that's actually where something like Intel could play to their advantage, because Intel has more mind share than Qualcomm. So again, a consumer could look at two 5G connected thermostats and see, oh, this one's got an Intel. Oh, well, Intels are good. And from Leslie on Facebook, sounds like Sesame Street's Elmo could run Intel better than the current folks. Maybe I just don't know enough about the whole situation. I mean, it's Elmo's world, and we're just living in it. He loves his goldfish and his crayons too, but he does, He does have a computer. I've seen some Elmo's World. Uh, Sentinel 909 joining the show. Hey everyone, back from work and straight into lovely tech geekdom. Welcome to the show. Goran Petrovic is watching. Qualcomm monopoly is definitely not a good thing. Someone mentioned Intel processors on the Asus Zenfone 2. It was cheaper and not bad at all. I had the Zenfone Zoom, and I think that one had an Intel chipset. So I think the Zenfone Zoom was largely a Zenfone 2 with the actual periscoping lens, kind of like what the P30 does for its zoom. Performance in that phone was largely fine. Intel just needed a little catch up on some of the way that they did like camera processing, some of the ISP, some of the performance there. But in the hand, it really didn't feel that much different than using a Qualcomm phone. You know, maybe also, if I remember correctly, it was also maybe just a touch twitchier for gaming. But again, I just have this hard time, this back and forth with, just because I care about mobile gaming, people jump out of the woodwork to explain to me how mobile games are garbage. From Kiwi Mad Dog 420, in the case of Apple, they can afford the best stuff so they don't have to settle for Intel. Other major chip makers, Qualcomm, Samsung, Huawei, would rather embed their own modems. Intel's really stuck. I think that's what's interesting, though, is why I had to tag Apple on the iPhone XS, because they were still charging a premium price for connectivity that wasn't as good as the iPhone X. You know, prices did kind of go up. You got less stuff in the box. I don't want to relitigate all of that. But I still had to say, like, this is a good consumer move. Intel was in direct litigation with Qualcomm. There was this back and forth tit-for-tat fight over patents and licensing and all of these issues. And it looks like because Intel couldn't get this next generation of modems up to the same spec as Qualcomm, that Apple folded, that they literally rolled over and played nice with Qualcomm just to get back on the Qualcomm train. And I think that's a bummer. Like, I think Apple could have made a play saying 2019, 5G, we're really excited about it. These are the products that you can look forward to. But as it pertains to the market, what we're focused on is delivering the best possible competition and product. And these are the prices and the ways that we think we can do it. And in 2020, that's when we're going to have our 5G iPhone. But instead, I think I think they got scared. And that's a bummer, because that's an Apple that's reacting too aggressively to the market, as opposed to defining the categories of products that Apple sells well. From Matt Tyler, a name carries a lot of power. Most people see Intel, Apple, or Samsung on it. They're more likely to buy than something that says Zenfone or Asus with MediaTek chips. It's all about branding, not the actual power of a device anymore. And Goran saying, that's true, Matt. That is true. Because we were just talking about Apple, and I think one of the biggest stories that hit kind of late last week was a shakeup in Apple design. And we've been getting, since the story broke, we've been getting a little bit more insight into what went down, and also some of the internal politics. Apple is a really quiet company. They keep their inner machinations pretty well locked down. Like, we don't get a lot of insight into the day-to-day operations of what goes on behind the curtain. From Andrew from Fat Produce, Jony Ive is still going to end up making bank from Apple, I'll wager. So, of course, what we're talking about are all the stories that Jony Ive, the lead designer at Apple, is saying goodbye. So the main story that I caught up with, and was just recently updated on the 28th, was from Bloomberg. Let me click over to that story right quick. Inside Apple's long goodbye to design chief Jony Ive. This was written up by Mark Gurman. Let me take a sip of water here real quick. So this is from Bloomberg, from the article. Jony Ive has been leaving Apple for years. When it was finally made official on Thursday, there was nevertheless hand-wringing about the company's future. I've led a stable, close-knit team of designers who created the slick look and feel of Apple's hardware and software for more than 2 decades. At least 6 members of the group have left in the past 3 years. The departures herald a new era, the days when Apple could reliably deliver a whole new category of device, a spare music player, a sleek tablet, an elegant smartphone, every few years have waned. More recently, the company has focused on iterations of its existing lineup. Now the company needs another hit, but this one will require fundamental technological innovation, not just the design genius of Ive and his team. And then The Verge actually has sort of a condensed write-up of the Wall Street Journal. So I should actually link the Wall Street Journal's article, but it's behind Wall Street Journal's behind a paywall. And so The Verge helpfully condensed their work for us so we could circumnavigate their paywall. But this is from the Verge's condensing of their piece. Ive was dispirited by Tim Cook, who showed little interest in the product development process, according to sources speaking to the Wall Street Journal. This helps explain why Cook, who comes from operations, sometimes appears to be seeing products for the first time in the hands-on area after Apple events, like the photo at the top of this article. Another bullet point. Ive grew increasingly frustrated as Apple's board was populated by directors with backgrounds unrelated to the company's core business. Another bullet point. Apple will pay Ive's new firm, Love From, millions of dollars a year to continue to work with Apple. And then also, I've disagreed with some Apple leaders on how to position the Apple Watch. I've pushed for the Apple Watch to be sold as a fashion accessory, not as an extension of the iPhone. The product that went on sale was a compromise. Apple only sold a quarter of what the company forecasted in the first year, according to the Wall Street Journal, with thousands of the $17,000 gold Apple Watch edition left unsold. The last 2 bullet points, the design team continues to work on AR glasses that would give users visual displays of messages and maps, and engineers found that the doomed AirPower charging pad behaved more like a dorm room hot plate, heating up loose change and failing to evenly recharge devices. So, numerous articles have now come out like, and Jony Ive was only coming into the office once a week, and he was extremely dispirited. And I know he suffers a lot of anxiety. One of the things that's got to be super painful for a dude like Jony Ive. He never takes the stage at Apple keynotes because he does apparently have sort of a crippling anxiety to being the focus of attention in these types of arenas. So I feel for him that regardless of what might be happening, regardless of what the work and life environment was at a company like Apple, you're talking about a man who put 20 years of his life operating at a very high level, because I'm sure Apple demanded a lot of Jony Ive. And then only to have his departure sort of publicly blasted like this has got to be an amazingly rough place for an individual like him to be in. Regardless of whether or not you agree with some of his designs or where Apple has gone in the post-Jobs world, or what that relationship looks like when you've got an operations guy at the head of Apple, Jony Ive was never going to be the guy to take center stage. And you need a CEO who can take center stage. And Tim Cook makes a lot of sense for maximizing profits, minimizing costs, and developing preferred business strategies and solutions when you're working with manufacturing and distribution. That operations guy makes sure bills get paid and that profits are as high as you can make them. So for me, I just really feel for a dude who's probably not having a good week with people talking about him in this arena. That being said, I wonder where Apple goes, seeing as how Jony Ive already was somewhat devalued at Apple. If we're going to believe some of these reports from The Verge and Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal and what has come out about how Apple operates, Jony Ive was already sort of on the way out, and that this was just a long process to fully sort of separate him from the internals of the company so that he could go off and start his own design firm. So I think we're already probably in the first generations of devices that aren't fully Jony Ive baked pies, right? So now with this news out there, I don't know, what do you folks think? Tim Cook is at the head. He's no longer, sort of debating with Jony Ive about design and software and hardware influence. Do we think that this is going to be an opportunity for Apple to really invent new product categories? Is someone going to come up from the design team to be that figurehead to replace Jony Ive, to fill his shoes? Or are we concerned that this is going to be another data point where Apple continues to iterate, focus more on operations, focus more on profit sectors? Again, the current trend for a lot of the recent Apple keynotes has been to show off services. Services are a growth sector for Apple because they didn't have a lot in terms of like streaming services and music and gaming and all these software and server side subscription platforms. News, Apple News. That's my concern. I want Apple to be my nemesis. That's fun. I want Apple to define a product category when they arrive there. They're never first, but when they get there, like my Apple Watch is awesome. I really wish I could use my Apple Watch with any other phone. That's what I want. Like we don't get good competition if Apple is just market reactive. I want them to come out and do something disruptive when they get to that product category. And I've got concerns. When the last members of the old guard, of the old Steve Jobs guard at Apple, are on their way out, I don't know that we arrive at that vibrant, experimental and innovative product solution team. I'm not impressed by an Apple that thinks it's a good move to divide iOS and iPad OS, because you need to have two different products if you want to do something like read a memory card from an iPad, because you'd never want to have access to external storage on an iPhone. Well, an iPad can have advanced multitasking, but not an iPhone Max, because you need to buy two products if you want to split screen an app. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear how I feel about that, which is kind of a bummer. From Kiwi Mad Dog 420, some say he took the blame for the MacBook Pro's various issues. Maybe. I mean, it depends on how hard he fought for butterfly keys, because that was definitely a bad call. From Fat Produce, I wonder what will happen with other OEMs that become Ive's new firm. And then the Sentinel 909 says, you know what would shake everything up? Huawei hires Jony Ives in the new push for the United States market. Something tells me that Jony Ive's design firm is going to have a very tight relationship and probably a lot of non-compete with Apple if they continue to do business together. From Goran Petrovic, Huawei is in front of Apple in design. It would be a step back. I don't like Huawei phones, but no one can deny the best design. Pat Costin says beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Abraham says, wait, this means no more Jony Ive parody account on Twitter. No, I'm sure that parody account is still going to go hard. It's just not going to be completely Apple focused. From Abraham, honestly, I think Ive would be better suited with the Microsoft Surface team. I mean, could you imagine the epic fights? What's the dude's name at Microsoft? Joel Belfiore. Could you imagine? I would love to be a fly on the wall for Jony Ive working at Microsoft opposite the Surface team, Joel versus Johnny. Oh, someone needs to make that a web series. Oh, I would watch the crap out of that. Oh, and Panos Panay. Yeah, something tells me Panos Panay and Jony Ive would not get along either. Oh, so many amazing comedic potential opportunities here. But I'll have all of those links. I spent a lot more time on news. I always do, kind of rambling on. But yeah, I just, more than anything else, it sounds like the dude needs a break. And I hope he can get some rest and kind of kind of get his head right, because it doesn't sound like his exit from Apple, again, with us getting so many little sneak peeks into Apple operations, it doesn't seem like this was sort of the healthiest or the best way for him to depart. So just kind of a bummer. From Q3 Becker, Microsoft employs Ives to make the new Zune. I'd buy a new Zune. I can't even lie. This is where we take a short break in between news topics and stories before we get to the big story. That's Huawei, President Trump at the G20, Xi Jinping. And then also to announce the phone challenge with TK Bay that I have a little pet project. It's something I've been trying to publicize just a little bit more. I did it a couple years ago. Actually, it technically started while I was at Pocket Now, but I didn't really start taking it seriously until the beginning of this year. And that's finding a resource or finding ways to help smaller content creators and smaller producers build their audiences, get monetization on whatever platform they're choosing to use, and find new voices and fresh voices in the tech community, while at the same time trying to offer some resources and some help to people who deserve more attention. Maybe they're an established commentator in tech, but they're not getting the traffic that they really deserve. So this little community, part of this is built on a subreddit, which you can follow. The subreddit is reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles. I make it free to self-publicize. That's usually a big no-no on Reddit. It's bad form to go onto an Android subreddit and post your own article or your own video. They get very upset about that. But then they also can't seem to figure out why everyone's just sharing like the same 3 news outlets and the same 2 YouTubers, and everyone complains that it's just the same. And part of that is it's not a very good system for discovering new content when you only support what's going to be shared based on popularity. So every podcast, I try and talk about some of the videos and some of the articles, if there are any articles, that are shared on glowing rectangles. So reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. These are the top stories of the last week, and I am so excited that this one made it to number 1. This is from Techno Minute. Only has 1.2 thousand subscribers on YouTube, and this channel deserves so many more subscribers. I really need everybody who's watching this to help share Techno Minute, because I very much enjoyed the retro review using a Handspring Visor Deluxe PDA in 2019. This is someone who's too young to have actually lived through this as an actual business communications device when it was brand new. And it is hilarious watching him on video. It's really hard to use these things on video, but he does. On video, he tries to write a message using graffiti. It was a shorthand notation system for the Palm Pilot where you would scribble symbols that would then become letters. And if you got really good at it, I mean, like, graffiti was actually really good, especially in sort of a news reporter. I'm using a shorthand, a very simplified script to very quickly write out messages. Again, from an era where you would have to use a stylus and a pen tab and stuff like that. That's the top story on our glowing rectangles. It's this beautiful love letter to an era that he probably didn't participate with. A retro review, Handspring Visor PDA from Techno Minute. Then after that, another content creator I'm always going to be happy to share their content, and someone who's only at 97,000 subscribers, who should absolutely have he should have broken 100,000 by now. It's a shame that he hasn't. Gary Explains. Gary Explains always offers up really great, nuanced, deep dive, tech literate examinations of products, and he's going after the Raspberry Pi 4. So Gary Explains Raspberry Pi 4 review, dual displays, and up to 4 gigabytes of RAM. Definitely check this out. Gary Explains is an awesome channel. He's been running the Speed Test Gs, the Gary Explains series, where he explains, you know, when a YouTuber writes such and such explained, and it's almost never something that needs explanation, right? The ending to Prometheus explained. And then there was that part where, like, he ripped the dude's head off. That's weird. That wasn't explaining, and I didn't need that explained. when Gary does an explains video, he actually explains stuff, and he actually explains stuff that needs explaining. I mean, it's probably the truest advertising, like the channel is exactly what you think it is, and Gary is the right dude to bring that stuff about. So he's done work with other tech outlets. I think he's still regularly doing videos with Android Authority, but he has his own channel, and he does his own content on his own channel. And you should absolutely give that a follow too. That's again, it's like that participation matters if you want these types of conversations to show up in your stream. And then lastly, I'm just going to skip back in here. We've got a tie for third place. We've got the Baseus S17 Sport headphone review from CW Tech. He's spending some time reviewing some headphones. That's always going to be happy content for me. And then Easy Computer Solutions, rocking an LG G6 camera in 2019, shooting some cinematic content and using a gimbal to produce high-quality video with an older phone. That's also going to be a conversation that's always going to be up my alley, getting the most out of our products, really driving them, running them longer than, a year, not just talking about an LG phone after the week of release. The LG G6 is still a formidable performer, and Easy spent some time using it on a gimbal. CW Tech, the Baseus S17 headphone review was a lot of fun to watch, especially if you're looking for something sportier, not necessarily audiophile. Again, we want different headphone solutions for different audiences. So, reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Please check it out. Don't be stingy with your upvotes. And then also come and share. If there's a producer that you feel deserves more attention, put them on the subreddit. Let's see if we can help them get a little bit more exposure. Let's see if we can use this as a link farm so that they can be found by other larger subreddits and get that audience boost that they really need. Or again, if it's a content creator that just isn't performing like they used to, YouTube's popularity algorithm can be really damaging to some of the conversations that we still want to have. There just might be a bit more evergreen, but then YouTube won't show them in search, or they won't notify your subscribers. That happens to me on the regular. So, last plug, reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Share, like, comment, contribute. Please check it out, because content creators need more than just a passive view. A passive view is nice. Seeing your views climb is very nice, but if you want those voices to continue, active participation is key. Beyond just watching, sharing, subscribing, commenting, putting these videos out there for that content creator, that stuff matters, and it helps a lot. And we don't want tech conversations to get boring, so you need more voices in the tech space to keep shaking things up. Oh, and a conversation about what's going on at Android Authority. Apparently, Lon left Android Authority. I had no idea. But I didn't think Gary had. I thought Gary was still working with them. He was just also promoting his own channel. Okay. One last big story. How are you folks feeling about Huawei? This was a frustrating, Saturday morning we woke up to news that Trump will be lifting tariffs and letting Huawei buy U.S. products again. So let me pull this up. This was from CNBC. Excuse me. Written up by Everett Rosenfeld. Let me skip over the key points. I'm trying not to burp on the microphone. Apologies. Here we go. U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed on Saturday to proceed with negotiations after a series of escalations to their nation's trade war threatened to disrupt the global economy. On the sidelines of the Group of 20 summit in Osaka, Japan, the two leaders held a highly anticipated meeting, which Chinese media outlets reported ultimately took about 80 minutes. Both sides confirmed in separate comments that they did not plan to levy any new tariffs against each other's products at the present time. For one, Chinese state-run press agency Xinhua, I have no idea, Xinhua, how to pronounce that, sorry, described the meeting result as the presidents agreeing to, quote, to restart trade consultations between their countries on the basis of equality and mutual respect, unquote. So Trump, when asked about Huawei, on the subject of Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications behemoth that Washington has described as a security risk to the U.S. and allies, Trump suggested he will be reversing his government's decision to ban American companies from selling products to the tech giant. Still, Trump said the issue of Huawei will be resolved only at the conclusion of the negotiations. Quote, "We mentioned Huawei. I said we'll have to save that until the very end. One of the things I will allow, however, is a lot of people are surprised we send and we sell to Huawei a tremendous amount of product that goes into a lot of the various things that they make. And I said that's okay, that we will keep selling that product." End quote. The American president also projected that China would be buying large quantities of U.S. agricultural products following his meeting with Xi. Quote, "We're holding on tariffs and they're going to buy farm product." End quote. Okay, so they're talking trade deals, and it really seems... I mean, we've been updating this story throughout the weekend. Sorry, I've got to shift my chair here for just a second. We've been updating the story throughout the weekend. Some new revelations came this morning, especially getting the East Coast feeds this morning when I woke up. There's been a fair amount of administration backpedaling that no, this wasn't a terrible move, and no, China isn't winning. But it really seems like we're kind of giving up everything in the tech sector, and we're giving everything back to Huawei. While they're still on the list of companies to investigate that might be entities of collusion with the state-run government, and they still might be a security risk. But we got better farm buys. So China's promising to buy more stuff from American farmers. Again, kind of probably just getting back to where we were before. And that means we give up all of the negotiating and posturing in the telecommunications and tech center. So awesome deal making. But this is a situation where I kind of feel like there's a little honesty at play. Like, I still have never seen any evidence to suggest that Huawei consumer products have posed any direct or legitimate threat to American consumers or American businesses. And in every interaction with the Trump administration, especially when President Trump is directly quoted, it's almost always a direct tit for tat. Well, I mean, we'd love to sit down at a bargaining table and get some stuff moving. You're like, but that's not a security threat. That's not a security issue. That's you playing business with a company and with a government. That's terrible. And again, it's also just incredibly difficult to untangle President Trump quotes. Again, it's just you have to take snippets of this stuff. I would love to see some more of these videos play out long form, even though that would probably hurt my brain. Leading up to the meeting at the outset of the high-stakes talks, Trump said he was open to a historic trade deal. I actually think that we were very close, and then something happened where it slipped a little bit, and now we're getting a little bit closer. But it would be historic if we could do a fair trade deal. We're totally open to it, and you're totally open to it. I think this will be a very productive meeting, and I think we can go on to do something that will truly be monumental. President Xi Jinping: 40 years on, enormous change has taken place in the international situation in China-U.S. relations, but one basic fact remains unchanged. China and the United States both benefit from cooperation and lose in confrontation. Oh, how much more succinct and articulate. Again, we saw some clumsiness from Trump officials, from Ivanka Trump, in trying to operate at the world stage, and I really just don't believe that Trump has any kind of grasp on the political and the economic ramifications of actions like these, where he's acting like, well, I just turned off Huawei. Just pulled the plug. Oh, China wants to buy more soy from the United States. Okay, I'll plug it back in. It's fine. It's how business works. I'm doing business. And that's not how anything works with multi-billion-dollar, world-spanning corporations, product distribution, selling products to entities like Huawei. All of this is now in a tremendous mess. And because I don't believe our president understands what any of this means. He's looking at big numbers, and that means he's doing big things. And that's important because he's a bigly man who does the bigly things, and it's kind of disgusting. So, and actually, I'm already getting a number of comments here. I know Andrew Wallace had skin in the game. Fat Produce was very concerned about his Huawei P20, and he recently sold his Huawei P20 Pro on Swappa, and he's only using an Xperia XZ1 Compact. So I don't know. I don't feel like it would have been premature to sell off Huawei products if you were concerned about things like long-term support, software updates, what the strategy for Huawei on developing their own operating system would have been, the fallout with Huawei and the Wi-Fi alliance and the Bluetooth alliance and the SD card alliance. One of the reasons why Huawei was working so aggressively to make their own memory card format for their own phones, just because I think they already saw some of the potential for this plug being pulled. I don't think I would say that anyone who sold off a Huawei phone with that specter of doubt on top of them was acting rash. Phones are super critical, mission critical communications devices. We want to trust in them. And that's the kind of damage that this move does, because you can't undo all of the headlines of security threats and risk, and Trump pulls Huawei's ability to sell and buy from U.S. corporations, and we saw what that did to ZTE on a smaller scale. And again, that damage has been done. That you can't really unring that bell, and it's just frustrating. From Matt Tyler, the Huawei ban was just a power push, nothing to do with security risks. I increasingly am agreeing with that sentiment. I have been kind of for a while. From Aditya Anil, Huawei is back, and while I'm happy about their rejuvenated life under Android, I would still like to see Arc, Hongmeng OS, their other side projects. I would really like to see Huawei come back, still offer Android products, but just can't trust those Americans anymore. So we've got our own operating system too. I kind of wished Samsung had kept on with Tizen and offering phones with their own operating system. I think it would have been kind of fun. And again, I want more competition in this space, and I think it's dull when it's just Apple versus Google, and mostly Apple versus Samsung. Chatty Boy 3 on Mixer, Huawei was clearly never a threat to national security. They were just a pawn in the trade war. This should be illegal. There should be some kind of ramification or regulation or market correction for administration officials that tweak or play with companies like this. Because again, remember, in the United States, our elected officials are not prevented from trading in the stock market on the information that they have inside the closed doors of Congress and the Senate while they're drafting laws. So they could write a law that totally decimates one industry, and they could use that information to profit on the stock market, even though the CEOs and the officers of those companies would be tagged for illegal insider trading. Well, the politicians don't have to play by those rules. Abraham AM, the art of the deal. So I don't know, but for as frustrated as I'm sure we all are about Trump and for how bad we're being represented on the world stage here in the United States, what are you folks thinking? I actually posted a poll on Twitch. You can vote in the poll. With this recent revelation from Trump that trade was more important than the potential security risks of Huawei products, Will you be jumping back on the Huawei train? I feel Andrew Wallace has a vote to cast in this, as he had a P20, but he might be considering an Asus, I believe. He might be looking at a Zenfone instead of going back to Huawei. Has this soured your potential future phone purchase? And again, market instability and the inconsistency of how governments work with corporations can also weigh in. You know, maybe you're going to slow play and see if Huawei really does get to come back in full. Well, that reduction in sales from people waiting to see is going to have a real negative impact on Huawei's bottom line. So I'll be curious to hear from you. Definitely hit that up, or if you're listening to this after the podcast, you can go to twitch.tv/SomeGadgetGuy, vote in the poll there too, get some of the numbers on that. I just think it's a frustrating topic to delve into, because for all of the people that were out there putting out commentary, Huawei needs these market corrections. If they're engaging in this, kind of espionage or selling off products to unfriendly governments, then they need to be taken down a rung. But apparently none of that really mattered once Trump sat down in front of Xi Jinping. Apparently all of that just went out the window, and now he's fighting for farmers again. So that's good. I think we're all real happy about that. Let's see. Kiwi Mad Dog 420, speaking of Tizen and Bada, Samsung Wave was a great phone for its time. Really wish I had been able to play with one of those. I want some other operating system. If it was like a Nokia N9 or Tizen or Bada or any of them. I get so excited seeing another take on user interface and how to use a phone. From Fat Produce, yeah, I'm going to get out of the crosshairs of this trade war. It's your money on the line, and how your phone works. It's probably a good idea. Paco Stin, I wonder how many of the software security issues with Huawei equipment were in fact improper installation or keeping old versions for compatibility with 3 infrastructure in the UK. I don't know about that specifically, but I know MI5 said that there was very little risk or threat from Huawei equipment that they couldn't mitigate, that they couldn't manage. And again, I feel like MI5 making a public declaration like that, we could probably take it seriously. Aditya Anil, I mean, I was planning on getting a cheap Huawei just to experience ArcOS. Otherwise, I have no need for a new device now. And yeah, I guess that's probably true too. If we do see a Huawei OS phone, I am going to fight hard to get my hands on one. Chattyboy3 on Mixer, hashtag bring back Windows Phone. I would love, especially with Windows 10 on ARM and Windows Core OS, when they're trying again with a more app-focused OS, I'd love to have Windows on a mobile device again. I love it. I keep regularly going back through videos. In the CoolPad Legacy review that I posted, I made some comparisons to some of the hardware that they were using there to some of the older Windows Phone phablets, some of the Nokia, phablets like the 1320. Those Lumias were so much fun. And every time I pull a Lumia out of one of my little protective pouches, it's like, I loved this phone. I want to go back. I miss it. Aditya Anil, I agree with the dude on Mixer. Hashtag bring back Windows Phone. Chattyboy3, you're going to start a movement. I love it. All right, folks, getting down to it. I mean, technically, this is supposed to be a 2-hour podcast, and we're down to the last 10 minutes. Something tells me we're going to run a little long. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes, sizes, sorts, and persuasions, I like a good challenge. I've always been trying to make debate videos between different tech topics. We tried a few on Pocket Now, tried a few on my own personal channel. They're a lot of fun to produce. Kind of hard getting people in for a collaboration. But I still have plans on doing more. They just won't be regularly produced. But my buddy, TK Bay, we've done a few one-off challenges and podcasts and comparisons. Last year, I think one of the most fun head-to-heads that I got to do last year was trading phones with TK Bay. So this was before the launch of the V40. I was a big fan of the LG G7. And TK was doing a ton of traveling and shooting a ton of content on his Huawei P20. So once we were into the summer and, the reviews are kind of calming down, other videos are starting to heat up for rumors and leaks, and the slate of fall devices is kind of an onslaught in October. We spent some time trading our favorite phones of the first half of the year to get a sense of, what's going on. How's the other side living? Is the grass greener on the other side? And I think that was a fun exchange. We got a couple podcasts out of it. I did a video on it, and then I also did sort of a recovery. Like, I'm really glad to have my G7 back. Now my wife has that G7, and I really wish I had my G7 back again. So while I was on TK Bay's podcast, we talked about another collaboration. We were planning on doing the same thing again with a G8 versus a Galaxy S10. And we thought that would be a fair comparison, but timing and TK's travel and my travel, couple Newegg productions kind of got in the way. We never got that collaboration off the ground, but we were talking about it on he's reviving his podcast. I was on his YouTube channel and we were chatting about it. And a couple viewers like, oh, well, what if we did something else instead? If I did an LG G8 versus Galaxy S10 challenge video now, it really wouldn't be that exciting of a showdown just on the timing now. And we all know that the G8 would absolutely stomp all over the Galaxy S10. So people in the live chat were saying, hey, what if you did something like a cheap phone challenge? And actually, I think it was Andrew Wallace who brought up, what if you did like a junkyard challenge, kind of like what they used to do on Top Gear? You've got 100 pounds. Can you buy a car and drive it across the south of France? And so we really liked that idea. So we set the rules. The rules were it had to be a functioning smartphone running some form of Android, $75 or less, but trying to get as close to that $75 limit as you could, just to see. And you choose the phone for your competitor. So I'm picking a phone for TK Bay. He has no idea what I've got right here in front of me. He picked a phone for me. I have no idea what phone he got for me. It could be an older phone, like you go to Swappa and just search for a $75 phone. But I decided to go with a newer phone. Well, like a new inbox phone. You see, I was really looking at the way that TK Bay uses his products, uses his devices, and, there are a couple trends. He's a big fan of Huawei. He loves those designs. He likes Honor, really likes those like glass, shimmery, shiny kinds of products. I didn't want him to feel like when he'd pull this phone out of his pocket that it would look out of place in his hands, right? So I really took that into consideration. He also likes larger phones. Like he loved, the Mate X, that fat tablet. It was like a 7-inch phone. He really liked that phone too. So I was like, I can't get him a tiny phone. That would be kind of mean. But more than anything, I'm just like, hey man, I don't want to get him something that some other person had like sweated and slobbered all over. So I went new. So I do not have a drum roll. I probably should have queued up some kind of sound effect for this, but TK Bay, your phone is right here. And I'm going to show you this phone because for the next week, maybe 2, your device will be the X-Gotti RS. $66 on Amazon after tax and getting it shipped here, just under $75. I think it came out to $73. And I think you're in for a treat. Because I'm gonna help you out with just a little sort of loose unboxing, because it's a big phone and you like big phones. And I want you to look at the back of this puppy, X-Gotti. Oh yeah, look how pretty that is. Got that sexy glass going on. They only say that it has 2 camera sensors, but there are 3 on the back, and I have no idea what that's for. And it is a 6-inch display, 2:1 aspect ratio. So this is I think this is going to be your jam. I've got my fingerprints all over it now, so it's already smudged up. But this is going to be your phone, the X-Gotti RS. I wanted to find something new. TK Bay knows his way around Samsung. He knows his way around Huawei. He knows his way around HTC and Blue and Vivo and Oppo and all those other brands. I don't think I've ever seen him use an X-Gotti. So for $73, oh yes, this is your jam, TK. I'm very excited to see what you think of this phone and if it can even hang with your usage. Quad-core MediaTek processor, 1 gig of RAM, 8 gigabytes of storage. And I don't think it has any LTE radio connectivity, but it's going to look the part. It is completely going to look like a phone that would be in TK Bay's pocket. So TK, next time I see you, I think we're going to try and meet up sometime this week after the 4th. I got this phone with your name on it. I think this is going to be a fun showdown because now I'm super anxious to see what you got for me. Oh, man, this is going to be so good. From Gary the Fireman. No relationship to John Gotti. No, it's X Gotti, not John Gotti. Abraham, damn, Juan, that is just, wow. Fat Produce. Juan, you're a cruel man. Chatty Boy 3, damn. Matt Tyler, 8 gigabytes of storage, OMG. Chatty Boy, he can install at most 2 apps. And Goran Petrovic, Juan the Dirty. Hashtag some dirty guy. So yeah, that's the gig. We're going to do a crossover. We're going to trade these phones, kind of share some of our initial thoughts. We're going to do a couple podcasts, just longer form conversations. We're making fun here. But it was something that I wanted to take seriously after using a couple cool pads. An Android phone at $40 was totally usable for getting low-level basics covered. Smart phone calls, text messages, email, it worked. Same thing, the cool pad at like $180, but really closer to $100 depending on where you shopped it, was a really nice experience at $100. It wasn't just about covering the basics. It was a pretty decent platform for multimedia. Obviously, I'm being a bit cheeky here because I went for design way more than I went for the technical guts, the cool technology inside. I was like, what is the cheapest phone I can get that looks like a Huawei P-series phone? And I found it. In fact, I think on some of their literature, they even call it the Mate RS, which is kind of silly. But yeah, so that was my key there. But I think when we get to the end of this challenge, both TK and I are talking about like maybe we should give these phones away. Like we are looking at functional devices. There is probably someone out there that just needs a phone. I mean, if the X Gotti is functional at all and you can put a SIM card in it and it doesn't like explode when you look at it cross-eyed, there's someone out there that could probably use it. So I think at the end of this challenge, rather than like keeping this in our collections, we're going to be looking at maybe doing a fun little cheesy giveaway. So some of these cheap phones can also make it into the hands of people who might actually need or want some of this stuff. But that's the gig. That's going to be our challenge. Hashtag cheap phone challenge. And I think this could also be something fun for us to expand on too. Like we could also play around with some other products, other services, and then look at bringing a couple other YouTubers in to collaborate and do some other events like this. But I just like working with TK, and he's a really fun guy. So if you haven't, TKDSL8655 on Twitter, look up TK Bay on YouTube, subscribe to his channel. He also covers some stuff for XDA, so I'm sure you've seen him around if you're into the tech scene. But yeah, now it's on him. Now the competition has been joined with the X Gotti RS. The box is kind of creaking. That's probably a sign of fine craftsmanship. But then he's going to be putting out another video too. I think he's going to react to this, and then he's going to tell me what phone I'm getting. So be on the lookout for a few more hashtag cheap phone challenge tweets and Instagram videos coming out soon enough. So I think that's about it. I think we can wrap this up. Made it to just at 2 hours. It's 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So let's wrap this up. Be on the lookout for the cheap phone challenge. Check out the Sound Guys podcast. Oh, okay. So celebrating podcasts. Yeah. Okay. Yes, please go support the Sound Guys. You can listen to me more. In case you haven't listened to me enough already, you can listen to me more on the Sound Guys podcast. I do want to throw it out there, a new, totally charming, completely homegrown, no backing, not a lot of eyeballs. I have to see if I can find it real fast. I know if it's on Twitter, in defense of... Sorry, this is a terrible way to wrap up this. Maybe it's just hashtag in defense. I'm going to have to put links to this in the show notes. There's a podcast that I just started listening to called In Defense of Bad Movies. And so they've done an episode on Geely, on Waterworld, and Master of Disguise. Give me 1 second. In Defense of Bad Movies. Oh, come on. Hold on. It's on my phone. I'm going to pull up my podcast app right now. Doing it live. Super live. indefenseofpodcast.podbean.com. And they've got this kind of like rainbow diagonal logo. Check it out. Two charming Canadians talking about movies that are supposed to be terrible, but then they're trying to find something redeemable about those films. I think it's super charming. It's a fun, long-form discussion. Two movie fans just talking about movies. And for someone who started their podcasting career by making a movie review podcast 10 years ago. Oh, my God, it was over 10 years ago that we did Movies You May Have Missed. It's just sort of, it felt like the spiritual successor to the show that we did. So Movies You May Have Missed was all about celebrating movies that didn't get enough attention. In Defense of Bad Movies is all about trying to find something nice to say about movies we say are terrible. So check them out. Lots of podcasts to recommend. Sound Guy's podcast, my podcast. In Defense of, I'm going to be doing some guest appearances on a couple other podcasts this week. And then I'm also going to be recording a very special creator chat podcast with Trisha Hirschberger. So we finally found some time just to sit down and have a long-form chat about content production, her experiences moving to Twitch. She's been trying to play around with her YouTube channel a little bit more, and we've been working together for a long time now, especially on Newegg. We've been producing a lot of stuff together over at Newegg. So be on the lookout for that. The live stream for that will be Patreon, but then the show will be public once it's recorded and cut and everything too. So you'll see that in your RSS feed. All right, folks. This was an awesome live chat. Thank you so much for following me through all these random, crazy political stories. I know this was a politics-heavy podcast, but we had some fun stuff in there. And again, I feel they're stories that deserve more attention and that we should stay on the commentary for these types of stories. So, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet. I am at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters and the Facebooks and the YouTubes. Well, not really on the YouTubes. I'm Juan Bagnell on the YouTubes. The Twitch, which you're probably watching me on right now if you're watching live. I want you all to have a fantastic week with your technology. If you're in the United States, we got the 4th of July coming up, so I'm hoping you get some time to hit a barbecue, eat some good food, spend time with people you care about while we watch, cities blow up small pieces of the country that we love with amazing fireworks displays. It's always just a fun time. My daughter's old enough to really do the ooh, ah during fireworks shows, so we're really excited about that. And I will catch you back here next Monday on another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. Do awesome with your technology. Be awesome with your technology. I'll catch you back here next week. I love y'all. Take care.